Here we are, live. Oh my gosh, what is this music in the background? Oh, we're here on a rocking theme, kind of cheesy rock a little bit. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Riffing with Ryan. I'm Ryan Erickson. The theme here of this series of episodes I've been doing for the last couple days, and will continue on for a week or so, however long it lasts, is this is an agile coach. A simple question or a simple assertion, you might think. However, in the past several months, and I think beyond that in the past, a gentleman named Marcelo Lopez has been stirring up things around the LinkedIn sphere in the Agile community that is not a community with this hashtag, no such thing as an Agile coach, right? So the next step in my mind and my idea or thought is that if there's no such thing as an Agile coach, and that kind of rubs folks maybe the wrong way, why not engage in this is an Agile coach and have some folks that I know and whoever wants to do this in the future come in and say, this is my vision, my view of what an Agile coach is. Do a little bit of a monologue. We'll stop for a second. Our guest, special guest, will riff on that for a bit, and then I'll ask one of my favorite questions in the end. So the guest today is a gentleman that I know pretty well, and have come to enjoy and be very, I admire what he does and how he does it for the Agile community that is not a community, with Amplio and many, many years, not that many, of experience in the world of software development, Mr. Al Shalloway. Hello, Al.
Hey there.
Hey.
Actually, 54 years seems like a lot to me.
54. Did I say that? Oh
no,
my
you
gosh.
said not that many. I've been programming. Well, I haven't programmed that much recently, but I started programming in 1970, 71, at least something like that.
Oh my God. I was born in 1971. Maybe so. Okay. All right.
Experience doesn't necessarily mean anything, though.
What? Oh, and that's a whole other thing. But what kind of experience do you have doing the same thing in the same place for
I've
X
been
years?
doing it a long time. That doesn't make me an expert because I've done it a long time.
And yeah, so how? And this again, one of my friends, I think you know, Kyle Arate, says this is all about being less wrong. Right. That means you are going to be wrong and kind of go through it. So I set the stage here a little bit for what we're going to do today. Would you want to say a little bit about who Al is in a moment or two before we get into the question?
Yeah. So I actually had been a lot of development for like 30 years when I kind of had a shift because I formed Net Objectives in 99. And we formed actually on the basis of technical training, doing a lot of design patterns, and actually I still do and other people do. And about 2 or 3 years into it, though, we got into Scrum and XP and then later SAFe and Kanban and all that. So I'll admit for the last 20 years, I have not been a developer, but actually my design techniques are still valid because they're kind of timeless. I got them a lot from Christopher Alexander. And in 2019, Net Objectives, the IP anyway, was purchased by the PMI, and I built the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant Workshop. And about 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I left the PMI. And what I've been doing since is when I left the PMI, it gave me a break to say, look, what should we be doing? Not what's the next framework, what's the next approach, but rather, how do you learn? And how do you continue to solve problems? And here's a really weird idea. Instead of having a predetermined approach, before you look at what the problem is, maybe you want to look at what the problem is and then have an approach. Now, Disciplined Agile does this, but in a not as full way as I'd like. So Amplio, which is Latin for improve. Actually, there's a lot of different interpretations of it. Enlarge is another one, but it's to me about improving and learning how to educate and thinking. And that doesn't make it abstract if you do it right. So that's what I'm into now is I have a what I call the Amplio learning journey where I work with actually some top consultants, and we're creating what I think is, I won't say it's the next thing because there are a lot of other smart people doing things, but it is definitely a next thing. And I think is kind of breaks the mold of not being complete, being insufficient, and not really enabling you to learn what's going on.
Ah, ha, ha, ha. Okay. So that incomplete is like, oh, is it purposefully
Purposely
incomplete?
incomplete. I hate that phrase. It's just because they haven't figured out how to make it so you can figure out what you need. By the way,
Mm,
this seems like a good time before you get into the other thing. Normally, I wear a collared shirt. I happen to have this
yes.
T-shirt on, so I was going to put a collared shirt. And I said, no, no, I think this message is perfect for what we're doing today. And on the
Yep.
back, I'm not going to turn out. It says insanity doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yes.
On the back, it says, I used to be insane. Now I'm different. And
Yes.
I made that up. The reason is if you're gonna not keep doing the same thing over and over again, you have to do something different.
Think
Well,
different.
we don't seem to have
Absolutely.
learned that lesson. We have 25 years of experience in not doing that differently. So anyway,
Yeah. So anyway, with that, the prompt of the day is, Al, what is an agile coach?
okay, well, that's a great question. But the problem with that question is nobody agrees what agile is. But let's not get too hung up on that, and I'll give it a generic definition. I say nobody agrees, so I was not at the original Snowbird where they made the Agile Manifesto in 2001, but I was invited back to the 10-year anniversary. Well, not back for me, but for a lot of the people there. In the 2011, this was the 10-year anniversary of Agile. It was kind of like a reboot or what? Where are we? And there were about 25 of us. Not all the originals were there, but a lot of them were, and some new ones. I was invited back, I suspect, because David Anderson and I, who was also there, and we brought in Lean Kanban. It's now now it's Kanban University, but for a while it was called Lean Kanban when I was there. And the 25 of us had about 15 different opinions about what Agile is. So some people believe Agile Manifesto defines Agile. I've always thought it was an amazing thing. It gave us a name, but I've never used that as a definition myself. In fact, I never signed it. And the reason I didn't sign it is because it didn't include systems thinking or management or other things. And I knew messiness would ensue. Now, admittedly, it took a lot longer for messiness to ensue than I thought it would. But systems thinking is a key piece that's missing, and it's still missing. But what's Agile? So let's just say, let me define Agile as not a set of principles or practices or anything set, but rather as an intention. So Agile as an intention would be for a team or an organization, a company, whatever, to get better at what they're doing in terms of adding value to their customers, having clarity on what that value is, and taking care of their employees at the same time, and taking care of their other stakeholders outside of the company at the same time. That, I think, is a working definition of Agile that can enable a good conversation here without getting hung up on what Agile is or how it's specifically defined.
Is that your story?
Coach, sorry, I left the question out.
It's okay. Take a breath.
My coffee has worn off. I tell you, Seattle's a great coffee place, but they just sell defective coffee here. You have a cup, wears off 2-3 hours. I did try Death Wish coffee, but that was too strong. Okay, so what's an Agile coach? So if you have something, you can do at least 4 or 5 things with it. You can teach it. You can coach. You can mentor. You can consult in it. You can do all of those things. Now, those do not, you can facilitate it. Now, those do not have solid demarcations between them. I think someone who's there trying to improve people's ability with Agile, they need to be able to do little trainings, micro trainings maybe to get points across. Sometimes they need to do consulting to figure out what to do, mentoring, working with people to actually help them do better, like you're watching them and working with them. And coaching is you point out something that might improve them. It doesn't mean telling them what to do. Good coaches don't typically tell people what to do. They say things so people discover what to do so they can follow it themselves. But how you coach depends a lot on what you believe is underneath all this. Now, a lot of people believe because we're in a complex adaptive system, which we are, that you really can't tell what's going on. Well, I disagree with it. I know a lot of other people who disagree with it. I've talked to Don Reinertson, Tom Gill. There's a level of understanding. And if you read Ellie Goldratt's work, he brings in what he calls inherent simplicity, which says at the bottom of it all, there are a few things that are driving through cause and effect the whole system. Now, he doesn't say you see them all because we're in a complex system. So obviously some things are obscured. But I believe, and Amplio is based on this, is that we can get to what's happening. And Amplio consists of two sets of what are pattern languages, not the scrum plot patterns, but pattern languages a la Chris Alexander, where it says, here's my intent, here's the problem I have, here's conceivable, technically, like what the solution, not technically, the intention, how you might solve it, and then multiple implementations. And you deal with what Alexander calls the forces, the issues. These would be principles, like delays cause problems. Handoffs can cause miscommunication, things like that. And that what we want to do is avoid what I call, or not what I call, but what are nonlinear events. A little change makes a big difference. So an agile coach would be somebody who knows this stuff more than the people they're coaching. Not that they know more. I didn't say everything. This stuff I said. Nobody knows more than everybody else, except your mother-in-law. That's a different story completely. But but the thing is, a coach then should see things that enable other people to learn in the way that's best for those people to learn. And it's rarely telling them. A good coach will know how to ask questions so other people can discover what's there. And they could do that because by seeing this underlying way things work, they will notice things that the person they're coaching doesn't notice, and they could ask questions so they find them, or they can point them out, or they can do certain changes that make these happen. Basically, they get access to the other person's, they get the other person to access their own dormant knowledge, what they know, but didn't know they know. You've all had experiences like this. You're talking to somebody and they say, oh, wow, I understand that now. I never understood that. I saw it, but I didn't understand that. See, that eureka moment is when you're accessing something you knew, but you didn't know you knew it. Good coaches get access to that, get you to get access to that. Okay, I think that's enough to get the idea of what I'm talking about.
All right. Good coaches get access.
They'll give you access to what you knew, but didn't know you knew. So now you know it because of your experience, not their experience. So you don't believe them. You don't have to believe them.
That you as the agile coach in this condition, it's not that you're believing them, or they're believing that you're kind of letting that knowledge to surface, maybe intuition. Is that?
Yeah. The other thing is, people can only learn what they already almost know. So if they have some past experience you could relate to, they'll know it because it was intuitive, or it was an ambient piece of knowledge, something close to them, or it's right next to something that they're ready to hear. You've heard that, like when you're ready to hear it, the teacher comes. So if you say something that's just a little bit of knowledge that takes you further down the road, and then you find the next little thing that's a little bit of knowledge that takes you further down the road, you can go from here to a big way where oh yeah, I got that. Oh yeah, I got that. Oh yeah, I got that. Little step, little step, little step, little step. It's little micro steps of learning. I call this, by the way, the pickup sticks model of learning.
Okay.
Where it's like a pile of pickup sticks. You want them to know that one on the bottom.
Yeah.
But hard. Top one's easy. Just mention it. Oh yeah, I got that. Oh, but now another one's on top. Oh yeah, I got that. So if you pay attention to these, what I call distinctions, I didn't come up with that term, but what are called, Fernando Flores I studied with him for several years in the 80s, talks about our knowledge can be thought of as a set of distinctions, like different ways we look at different things. And you know some I don't know. I know some you don't know. So as we talk about them, experts usually know more. Like I know what snow is, and I got 5 kinds of snow. Yeah. Is it good snowball making snow? Is it yellow snow? Is it snow I shouldn't drive on? Is it powder? Like a professional skier would probably have 10 different kinds of powder alone. He sees things I don't see.
Well, this is discernment, right? This is
discernment.
Discernment to be able to say, oh, this is happening. I can tell because of my work domain expertise. That's a key to someone who's out there listening. Because of my work domain expertise, I can observe and sense, and in a dance of questioning and maybe some guided questioning that you're asking, the question that you think it's going to go, that will allow the potential solutions to emerge based on the people who are there in the system. But you mentioned that the idea, I think that's partly at not necessarily at issue, but I think there's a lot of tension around, well, can you really be an effective coach if you aren't at that level of discernment, that you don't have the work domain expertise to be able to say how many types of snow there are. No, you go to, hey, you go to the This Is Snow class, and H2O, underneath a certain, temperature in the air becomes snow. There you go. You're certified a snow coach.
Well,
So
the thing is, no, I don't think you can. You're not going to be effective. You might understand that. Look, I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. They did not hire me to be their coach. I can't understand this. When I watch the game, I know exactly what they should be doing. And they make mistakes, but I'm just joking, of course. But the point is, I don't know the nuances, and I actually know football pretty well, actually, but I'm not at the level of a coach.
Well, you know the rules of the game. You watched the game for a long time. I don't know, again, your history. You may not have played the game on the field.
I have.
Okay, so that's a level of experience. Now, do you feel that experience combined with your watching and noticing and reading and all that kind of stuff, your interest, your love of the domain, plus some actual experience, does that give you the requisite level of discernment to be able to query, to go into inquiry with a system of people so that the challenge is dissolved?
This is a great thing, because the answer is I actually know a huge amount about football, but do I know how to talk to a professional football player so he'll change his behavior? Probably not. So what good does it do if I know all that stuff? But the real problem in the Agile space is most of this stuff isn't in the Agile space. We are crazy in the Agile space. Is that list up? I want to talk about, I just want to, maybe you disagree with me here.
No.
Point out 10 things. Okay, so what this list is, I just recently posted on this. So at Net Objectives, we had really good success. It wasn't 100%, but our success rate in working with large organizations, groups from 100 to 1,000 people, was about 80-90% of significant improvement over a good 15 years. And we did 10 things, and I saw other people. I'm not saying we're the only ones who did this, but this is not in SAFe and it's not in Scrum. The first one is find your problems before starting with a predetermined framework. That seems self-evident as a good idea, but it's not done that way.
Understanding sense making, maybe that word.
Sense making. I hate to use sense making because that relates to, it is sense making, but not sense making in the sense of understanding complexity or something like that. Yeah, what's going on in the company? What's wrong?
What's happening? Right.
Yeah, that's fine. I just sense making. I don't want it to get some people might confuse that with Kinevin, which is one way of sense making, but we're talking about the sense making of what's going on as a problem statement.
Yeah.
Drive from the value of the organization. You're not trying to just get teams working well. You're trying to get the organization working well. What's the success criteria and constraints of your critical stakeholders, which are both internal and external? Include management from the start. I have run several. We always had management involved. And we've had sometimes 100 to even 1,000 times return on investment, and management was always involved. I've written up several case studies because it's an organization problem, not a team problem. Minimum valuable increments, I don't need to go into it, but think of it, the smallest thing you could deliver that actually is worth the transaction costs. And we don't talk about this. Like Scrum has increments, and Scrum implies you can do this. Like, oh, I can deliver several increments in a sprint, but there's not a term for it. And here's the funny thing. Edgar Schein said, we don't think and talk about what we see what we think and talk about. Yeah. And I make another statement about it. I say, if it's not in our vernacular, then it's not in our thinking. So if you just use the word increment, well, what does that mean? It could be what I'm going to deliver. It could be the smallest thing I can deliver. So we don't have the terminology. Systems thinking, as I mentioned, it's still missing. Systems thinking gives you all sorts of insights. It's not the people as much as the environment they're in. You need quick feedback to deal with complexity. Sorry, you want to say something?
And even that systems thinking, that requires a level of, what do you mean by systems thinking, right? And maybe it is a specific domain, but I think about system. What system? What kind of system is that?
Just how we behave as a think of systems thinking the way Akoff talks about it. He's one of my favorite speakers. It's about the relationships between the components. Like if you look at a car as a system, it's how do all the pieces relate to each other, not the pieces themselves. Exactly. How does the Scrum team relate to product management, to the executives, to management? It's all that interrelationship you have to look at.
Yeah,
we don't deal with.
but I'm saying that you and I have that language. We know what systems thinking is. A lot of the folks who are here in the comments know what systems thinking is.
A
But
coach better know what it is, or they're
well, a
not.
coach better know. Yes, better
I
know
don't
what
need
it
to
is.
go through the rest of these. I'm going to make 1 point, 2 points.
Sure.
1 point to finish this up. The list is there. You can read it. Here's the point. In 20 years of being at Net Objectives, and then now 5 years since then, virtually every successful, sustainable improvement had almost all of these present in it, explicitly or tacitly. Yet these are not present in our current methods. So that's a lot of what the problem is. People are deflecting and saying you can't do this, can't do that, or whatever. But here's the thing. Think of it this way. I have a company here. What do we want to talk about? Team Agile coach at the organization level, like 300 people.
You choose.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 examples. I'll do an Agile coach at a
like
organization level.
There's 100,000 foot level, and then there's like a 3
and
to
a
500.
team. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Let's do a team. It's easier to see, but then it expands out. So I've got a team that wants to do some Agile approach. Now, we can talk about, we want something simple. And the answer is no, you don't. If you want something simple, go buy a Model T. That's simple. It's hard to drive. It won't go very far. It won't go very well, but it's not simple to use. Einstein made some comment. I'm not sure I can get it exactly right, but we confuse the form and the use with each other. We don't want a simple thing. We want something that's simple to use. Now, so if you have something simple and you force it on everybody, and it's the same thing and it's immutable, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's simple, defined, but it might be difficult to use because it's not fit for purpose. So the purpose of an Agile coach in this situation would be take this thing that might be complicated. With their experience, they tailor it to give something simple to the team, simple in the use, meaning it's fit for purpose, meaning it's easy to use without any problems, doesn't evoke resistance, doesn't cause waste.
Well, I mean, this is the idea of education and teaching, and and knowing the students, knowing the level of expertise of the students, knowing how good the team is. I mean, are they delivering, an app, a very basic, text only thing, or are they doing all these sorts of things with the React and Angular and all these kinds of things that whatever. How good are they at it? How is it? What do they need to know to solve the challenge that they have in front of them? So you need to know all those things. And again, this is what I'm hearing in this, as the Agile coach who's assigned to help them deliver business value, because you're hired to do that, what needs to happen in that human system so that each of those folks can learn what they need to know to produce what they need to produce to get the result they need to get, right?
You said something very critical there. I want to point out, you've got to know where the people are. In other words, a coach might know 20 things and the team might know only 10 things. So what's the coach going to do? If they don't know what these 10 things are, then they're either going to presume they know more than they do, which means they're going to assume they're here. What happened to that gap? You can only learn things you already almost know. They don't already almost know this. They already almost know this. So you're going to go over their heads. On the other hand, if you think they know down here, then you're boring them. Yeah. So that's another piece. Agile coaches need to know what people know. But that's not that hard to do. Because if you know what the distinctions are, then what you want to look for is, what do they know that they shouldn't be paying attention to? Yeah. What do I know that they don't know that they should be paying attention to? And you can discover that by asking questions. You don't have to tell them, you don't have to give them a test, but you do have to kind of be in conversation. Now, by the way, people love this because you're not setting yourself up as the answer. You're setting yourself up as somebody who knows something. In fact, I'll give a little coaching tip here that I think relates to this. So I say, when I start an engagement, I say 2 sets of things. The first thing I say is, look, I've been brought in, because usually they don't like Agile coaches coming in. They're, some other guy is going to tell us what they do. Oh my goodness. So the first thing I do is say, look, I was brought in, I've trained and I've coached lots of teams, so I have some experience. But you know what? I don't know your company. I will never know your company as well as you know your company. You know your problems. I have some experience with solving problems. but I don't have experience with solving problems for you.
Yeah.
So we each bring something to the table, and together we're going to work together to see how to solve problems. So that's one thing I say, because now they know I'm not this expert, and this is honest for me. It's very true. It's just kind of clear. But there's another thing I bring. I say, look, I'm going to say a lot of things. I'm going to say things that I call assertions. An assertion technically means I'm saying something's true, and I have evidence to support it. It's not my opinion. There's some objective measure of it. Like I can say that the leaves on that tree outside, you can't see it, but I could show you a picture, are green. And we could get what green means, and I could demonstrate it's got that frequency on it. But then what I say is, I'm going to make a lot of assertions, but assertions means I have evidence, but I'm not going to give you my evidence. I want you to give me your evidence. And one of two things are going to happen. You're going to have evidence, and then you'll know it because you know it, or you're going to disagree with me. That's great. Part. That's great. Yeah. See, now we can have a conversation. You can talk to me why you don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you misunderstood. Yeah. Maybe you're wrong. Who knows? Let's have a conversation. See, that's the way coaching can be done. You can be very much with an intention. I know where I'm taking these people, but I'm not telling them where they are. I need them to discover it. Not because they'll resist it. I need them to discover it because then they will know it and they won't need me anymore.
Teach yourself out of a job.
I never teach myself out of a job. Why? I just wanted to point. I'm teaching myself out of this particular job. But when you do that, just so to dispel the fear, most of the time they want you to do something else. So to me, it's just do the right thing and good stuff happens. That's my attitude. But yeah, teaching myself out of that job.
Okay, so we could go on for a long time here. So
I know you know me, so you got to interrupt and shut me
up. Yeah, and that's I've learned from interacting. I'm now not as much of an expert of Al as Al is. So
so I don't know, maybe more. Sometimes easier to see the expertise in somebody else, you know.
Ooh, it sounds like a coachy thing to say.
It is.
So all right. There's a bunch of comments here from some folks. I think.
Okay, I can't see them, so you'll have to ask me about them.
We can go through that in a second. I want to ask you we'll go because we can take a little bit of time with the questions after.
Cool.
If in the Agile community that is not a community, I would like to host a kind of what I call a brave space, safe space for dangerous conversations.
Okay.
In that community that is not a community, what do you think is the dangerous conversation that needs to happen?
I think we need to look at the responsibility we each individually have to getting into this effed up place we now call the Agile space.
X. Yeah.
Whatever that, like you say, the Agile community that's not a community. You look out at LinkedIn, and everybody else is pointing the finger at everybody else instead of how did we get here? It's not safe to talk about this. The fact is, I'm fortunate. I'm trying to create something big. I've been trying to do this for 2.5 years. I'll admit I'm learning a lot. I've got a few people working with me in my ACE program, the Amplio Consultant Educators program, where we're really creating Amplio together, which is way cool. Taking my 25 years of Agile work and things done is very cool. Yes. So I'm not worried about, I create a safe space around me, I guess, but I'm fortunate in that I could retire and I'm not.
Yeah.
But we have to make it so we can have conversations without attacking people. And part of that is up to you as well. If I get attacked now, I give a warning and I block you the next time. It's simple as that. I do not need to be called the things I'm called when they disagree with my work. Attack my work all you want to. Somebody once asked me that where I was pointing out something wrong with Scrum, and he said, how would you like it if somebody said something was wrong with Amplio? I said, I'd love it. That's how I improve. Tell me what's wrong with it. You can't make my work unsafe by telling me what's wrong. That happens to me every session. I do 6 1-hour sessions a week in the ACE program. Yeah. And a session does not go by where somebody doesn't tell me what I left out, what I got wrong, or I'm saying it the wrong way. And I always say thank you, and I mean it.
Yeah.
That's how we have to create that safe space.
That's the conversation to have.
And if people don't want to participate that way, I say don't let them in. Throw them out. Give them a warning, throw them out.
Well, again, it's Well, there's the whole idea and the laws about what kind of space you do. There's open space, and there's this kind of thing. I think we're talking about. What
Yeah,
what is
well,
what
open
is, what is this
space.
what is this place that we go? I mean, yeah, so we can go there too. But I want to cut this and this point. We can talk about the questions, and we can go for a little longer if you
Yeah,
like.
I got time.
Um,
I'm fine.
so thank you very much for those of you who are out there in the Alverse, in the Ryanverse, in the verse that is the verse. So yeah, so let's go from there. I will bring up one of these comments
Please.
and see where we go with that. Where's the first one? We have, is Al going to show off his home gym?
Oh, that's not my home gym, but that is an inversion platform in the back. Just
Oh,
it's like go back that way. That's what that is. So it's not a
okay.
home gym. I have a
Well,
home gym in the garage.
we'll go through the soft ones first. So then we have this.
That was with the home when I bought it.
Okay. And then we get into the serious part. So this was here.
No, I don't tell people what to do, but I know what they should do usually before they do, and I try to create a path to get them to where they should be. Now, that doesn't always work because sometimes I'm wrong. so as I'm trying to get them to go one place and I'm learning more, I said, oh, okay, I was thinking maybe this is where but here's what we have to do. And I step by step by step by step. I don't tell them even when they ask me. It's a myth that people don't want to be told what to do. I'm sorry. Why is Scrum so popular? It tells you what to do. Then it tells you a lot of stuff you don't know what to do, but it gives you a structure. People like structure. They like to follow. But if it's a tough problem, you're trying to exercise their brain. And in the exercising of their brain, by making them figure it out, they're stronger and they understand it. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's a challenge and inviting. There's this, I'm not sure what MIL is.
What was that about professional coaching skills to be?
Oh, you didn't see that one.
Okay, that sounds a lot like these professional coaching skills. Some people say shouldn't be the primary tool. I'm not talking primary or not. It's just a necessary skill. Which wheel on my car is primary? If I don't know how to convey something to people, then it doesn't do me any good or them any good that I know it. Knowing how to convey is important. And I teach this. Paula Stewart and I are writing a book, almost done, be published. I've been saying this for a few weeks, but it's going to be done soon. And it explains how to do this, how to listen. See, here's an interesting thing. So I'm going to just answer this a little bit a different way. So nobody is actually listening to what I'm saying, but that's okay. I'm not listening to what you're saying either. What's happening is you have a conversation, and in my head, it evokes another conversation that Fernando Flores called listening. I'm listening to that. I'm listening to my listening. Now, if you don't know this is how humans interact with each other, then you cannot communicate well. So, and if you're wondering, what the hell is Al talking about? That's the conversation I'm talking about, that internal dialogue that's always going on in our brain. That's your listening. And this is, if you can tune into that, if you know that's what you're doing, then you need to be able to understand how to listen to their listening. And you can do that by asking them. This is also the distinctions. And then as a coach, you can have an impact on them. And if you don't know how to do this, you will not be as good a coach. And this is a skill that can be taught. I was not born with this. I learned this. Okay.
I don't know what MIL is. Marcelo, you may have to tell me there in the comments. Okay, this is, again, the principles there that
you can't always teach. I always like the why. I like to look at what's the intent, what's the problem we're solving, what's the potential solution, what are different implementations. If you don't talk about the why, you're going to lose people. If you don't have theory with experience together, empiricism by itself is not very useful. Empiricism with a model of understanding is what's essential to learn. There are all sorts of evidence that this is true. Right? If somebody asks, I'll give you a story.
Okay, we'll go here. We were talking about expertise and expertise in the work domain, knowing someone's business. I think work domain, again, there's lots of conversations to have about that. And work domain in where Agile came from, Agile, the MASD in software development, right? So if you don't have sufficient software development expertise, then your ability to fulfill a fiduciary responsibility and deliver value is hampered. So
I
that's
would say if you don't understand technical issues, that will be a little bit of a handicap, but it's not an absolute stop. What you have to do in that situation is, first of all, there are some things that technical people don't do that a non-technical person can know to suggest to them to do and tell them and explain why. I'll give a simple example. So if somebody ever tells the developer, here, I need this, they should always ask, well, how will I know I've done that? Now, you don't need to know how to write tests to ask that question, but that can shift the whole conversation. So yes, knowing software skills helps, but let me tell you what's really helps as well. So there are two things here. There's the technical stuff. How do you write? How do you keep architecture separate from different stuff? Yeah, I know how to do that. That's not what I teach in my coaching classes. Rather, what I teach is, how can you learn you're wrong quickest? How can you be comfortable in discovering that you were doing something wrong and now you're right? What can you look at to tell how people can work better together? If you get people in a situation where all the people they need have all the skills available pretty much all the time, they will do better whether you know anything technical. There are some working together and team things that transcend domains. This stuff is not talked about, and a coach should be able to do it. So one last statement you get back.
sure.
The fact that a coach doesn't have all the skills they need doesn't mean they shouldn't have as many as they can get. And last thing, sorry. If you're not technical and you're talking to technical people, don't pretend you know what technical things should happen. Yeah. They will know this and they will be irritated by it. But that doesn't mean you don't know things about communication and things of that nature.
Well, I mean, this comes out, you respect each other's mastery.
Absolutely.
Right. If you're not showing respect, and I would say reverence, for the technical mastery that's happening, if you're in a technical domain, you have to defer unless you've got some cred there. You have authority, mastery-based authority. But if you come
in, there's no such thing as mastery-based authority. I'm sorry. I don't abide by authority. Authority means I'm saying I'm an expert. I can't explain something, but you have to believe me because I said it. I don't buy it.
But there is teacherly authority, but that's a whole other episode, and I would love to say, and I would call BS on that. So either way, but forget where I was going, but this idea of no, it's all right.
Mastery that if you don't have it, everybody knows something.
Respecting each other's mastery and having reverence for that flex. That's what I was going to say. If as a scrum master, coach, whatever. So there's also this dig about scrum masters, non-technical scrum masters, folks getting the 2-day cert and then falling on their face because they don't know diddly about software. But if there's an expertise that is shown and demonstrated in a team environment, that the team says, hey, we have this collaboration problem. Yeah. And that I respect your expertise as a facilitator or business domain, business analyst, that kind of thing that can be there. You have to demonstrate something and earn that respect.
Yeah, so let me say something you said, because it's just occurred to me. The fact that scrum masters who are not technical fall flat on their face and people say, oh, it's because they don't know technical. That's just correlation. The fact is they don't know more than Scrum. They don't know this underlying model, which Ken has disavowed exists. Jeff somewhat disavows it by saying we're in a complex adaptive system and we have to have it emerge as we go to understand it. That's the real reason. I would rather have a Scrum Master who understands first principles of knowledge work, who understands what I call factors for effective value streams. That'll tell you whether something will be an improvement or not. That understands what Goldratt calls inherent simplicity, that understands these distinctions, that understand we're only experts in a domain. This was barely breached in the, emotional intelligence. Look at Bobby Fischer, brilliant chess player, not so good social.
Yeah.
So when you understand that part, not understanding technical stuff, you can still contribute. But when you don't understand that part and you don't understand the technical stuff, you're somewhat useless. That's the real problem.
Yeah. Going back here a little bit, I think this kind of relates to what we're talking about now, is about, the coach would say, understand the context, do the listening, do the observation. But someone who went to the class, if all they know are the rules of the game, they're going to say, those aren't the rules of the game as I learned them.
That's insane. It's insane. That violates that first thing I said. Know what your problem is before you try to get a solution, which is one of the big things that I like about using lean or theory of constraints or flow is it says find your problem and then we'll figure out how to solve those problems. This is a Kaizen approach. What's wrong? How do I do a small fix? What's wrong? How do I do a small fix? Not let's jump to this. That was the heart of actually David Anderson's Kanban method, which is different from lean Kanban as I was doing it. But they both say, look where you are. Then you could either do incremental improvements or sometimes look where you are, see what's needed, and then make a big jump. That happens. By the way, I don't believe this, that an agile coach needs to sit with the team and be there for weeks. They only need to do that because they don't know the distinctions of agile. If you know the distinctions, you can go in a matter of hours and days and fix something almost always. I've never been in a place I couldn't see something immediately wrong that they could see how to fix. Not that I could see how to fix. I would see it and I could get them to see it. And that's because I have that deep understanding of how people work together, not how people write programs together.
Yeah. And again, this comment just kind of
agree with that one, Chris. I don't know why people say that. Only if you're trying to tell people what to do is it a detriment. Only if you got the arrogance of, well, we got to do it this way. Again, when I taught design patterns, I would teach simple concepts that they could use themselves. Here, I'll give you another one. Here's real simple. This is something anybody can do. And if I was a non-technical person, in fact, I'm going to start teaching my aces who are not technical this. So here's an architectural thing I found incredibly useful that you do not need to be a design person to know. And I'm going to write up how you can teach it. I'll mention it to you. I've never written this up. I'm going to say it. That is, in software, when you have a class, that's for those of you who are not technical, it's like a collection of what the program is doing something. Okay. And then there are different languages that handle it differently. That class should either know something about the application. In other words, it's doing something, or it should know something about the system you're in. Like, am I Java? Am I, servlets, whatever. Servlets ancient now. But it should never know both. If you do that, it's a real simple concept. But if you do that, then if the platform moves, you only have a few classes that are easy to change to move to a different platform. And if the application changes, it has nothing to do with the platform you're on. I have worked with companies. I've come in to people afterwards who didn't do this. And it's like, oh my God, I have to write all this extra code for no good reason. And it's not hard. It's not hard to do this. It takes really no extra work. In fact, I love that said first principles would go a long way. Absolutely. What are some of the first principles? Technical. Oh man, this is a great idea I just got here from that. Thank you. What are some first principles of technical programming that you don't need to be technical to understand? I'm going to write that up. I'll tell you one of them. It's called separation of concerns. You don't need to know how to write it. Just don't be dealing with the application and dealing with the platform architecture at the same time. You separate those. Anybody who's done technical has heard separation of concerns. How do we explain a Scrum Master? Now, if you're a Scrum Master and you read what I just wrote or when I write it, don't tell them you got to do separation of concerns. You've just immediately, by telling them, you've made yourself an expert. When they know more than you, they're going to hate you. They're going to disrespect you. You're disrespecting them. Yeah. What you want to do is ask them, what happens if the platform changes the way you're doing this? What happens if this changes? You just ask them. Yeah. See, they probably know the answer, but they're not wanting to look at it.
So I thought that this quote from Chris also came in there, kind of in the same domain. Okay, so how about this one?
Yeah, it does require requisite knowledge by which to reason, but sometimes that's domain free.
Yeah.
Oh, let me say one thing. Let me say one thing about this, because this is perfect. So in the late 90s, I read Timeless Way of Building. And if there's one book to read that I would recommend, it's Timeless Way of Building. It is not the pattern language and all that. In the Timeless Way of Building, Alexander explains how to look at big systems and decompose them, not in a reductionist way, but decompose them so you can see the relationships between things. I already mentioned Akoff talks about the relationships between things. Yeah. The way Alexander talks about designing systems runs counter to most of the way people design. For example, Scrum design, Scrum at scale, all the Scrum-based models. You take Scrum teams, you work together, and you build it up from the modules. That doesn't work because the modules, when they are put in the whole, may not fit. That's California architecture. Every house in a complex looks the same. It's not Swiss architecture where all the houses beautifully fit together by being in the context. So how we design systems is something that a Scrum Master should know. This is something I talk in my ACE program. I may make a public seminar about it, but I have written about this a fair amount. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going with questions.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. The Gang of Four patterns, this was the design patterns, elements of reusable object-oriented software. They don't spend enough time on this. In fact, I didn't understand it. I remember reading the book. I'm usually quick read on technical stuff. And I remember I was struggling with this thing for like 6 months. I mean, it was obtuse. I was not a small talk programmer. So I did not truly do object-oriented. Grady Booch, for all his contributions, his book on OOAD set me back 5 years. It was the wrong way to think about object-oriented analysis and design. And small talk programmers, which they had a lot, the Gang of Four, they knew what objects were and how they were more about, again, relationships, the outside, the behavior, and how you related to other things. So in the patterns, what the patterns were really about are not the solutions to recurring problems in context. In fact, at the end of the book, Alexander, 4 pages from the end of a 549-page book, he says, at this point, you realize the patterns aren't important. I joke, why you tell me now? Tell me that on page 2. I'd have stopped reading.
Come on, man.
Except when you read it, you say, yeah, I knew that somewhere 50 pages before this. What he says are important. It tells you what's real. What's real are the issues between the patterns. So I mentioned at the beginning that success engineering has these pattern languages. What we discerned it at Net Objectives, but now I've documented it better here, is at scale, there are about 40 or 50 things you pretty much have to do from an abstract point of view, like an intention. You got to plan. You plan in a number of ways, but you got to have something, some way of having visibility. At the team level, there's something like 30. So if you think of those as patterns and you think of the pattern languages, how all these things relate to each other, and I've decomposed these based on Alexander's thinking, then what you can do is anybody, technical or not technical, can understand all those pieces. Technical knowledge is only needed to implement a few of those patterns. I don't know what's a synthetic knowledge. I don't have any synthetic knowledge. That sounds like when I make it up.
Well, I think that's created knowledge. I think that's what he's talking about there.
Well, experiential knowledge. What is experiential knowledge? Has anybody seen a black hole? See, I'm talking about a model that, so here's what I mean by knowledge. Let me just use my definition. If I've seen something, and out of that, I can create a model of understanding that I can use, predict accurately what's going to happen under certain circumstances, that's knowledge. But that's not just experiential knowledge. That's taking experience and putting together what's happening. Deming has a really good quote. Let me pull it up real fast, and I'm going to read it because to me, this is one of the biggest problems we have these are some of the biggest problems we have, that we don't understand things and we don't talk about it. So it's like Deming says, experience teaches nothing. In fact, there is no experience to record without theory. Without theory, there is no learning. And that is their downfall. People copy examples and then wonder what is the trouble. They look at examples and without theory, they learn nothing. The theory gives us a way to talk about our experience in a way that we can take advantage of it. Leonardo da Vinci said, he who loves practice without theory is like the sailor who boards ship without a rudder and compass and never knows where he may be cast. Yeah. Agile has abandoned theory. And we talk, empiricism. Yeah, well, okay, I like breathing too. Of course I like empiricism. But if you don't have theory to explain what happened, see, this is these case studies I talk about. Why was I able to do what I did? Okay, I'm a good coach. I'm a good consultant. I know a lot of shit. There's no question. Yeah. But if I didn't know how to take my theory of understanding, relate it to them so they could see it based on their past, it would not have happened. That's good coaching. That's good consulting. That's what I teach in the ACE program.
Yes. Full disclosure, I also had been in the ACE cohort, and it is an excellent way to experience that knowledge in real time and do that co-creation of knowledge and learning by doing and learning by being together. So highly recommended for those who are out there, and I enjoy it very much. At this point, it feels like we can go to a safe landing space. Is there anything that you would like to bring forward that you haven't yet said today?
I think we have to look at what's missing in the industry without attaching ourselves to our own belief system. I think creating safety involves, first of all, creating safety between our ears. It's our own conversations about ourselves, our own fear that if I have a certification and then I want to do something outside of that certification, that's scary. I know it's scary because now maybe you don't have a job, but you have to have confidence in yourself. There's a difference between courage and confidence. Have confidence in yourself. That will actually make it so you don't need as much courage because you'll know you can do things. I guess the lesson for me, the thing I guess I'm most frustrated in the industry is I think that there's a lot of stuff missing while people are defending where we are and saying it's not as bad. Let me tell you, when a curve goes up and then it levels off, it's not leveling off to go back up. It's going up, it's leveling off to go like this. Yeah. When AI gets a little better, then people get a little more dissatisfied with Agile. It's funny, someone from Scrum.org talked about having an AI team member to help you. Managers, because nobody's bothered to explain to them really why Agile is and why it works. They're going to think, oh, I'll just use AI for all this stuff. I don't need these people. It's going to get worse soon. Because one of the things, people blame management, but one of my favorite quotes from Ellie Goldratt is, a comfort zone has less to do with control and more to do with knowledge. Managers aren't holding on to their past because they're just these asshole jerks who think they know more than everybody else. Okay, I'll admit there are some of those.
Well, they're people. They're human beings too.
They're people too. I actually wrote, it's funny, I wrote a post years and years ago, managers are people too, to explain how you have to respect. You wouldn't believe the pushback I got on that. I was like, what? They're people. Jesus. They're behaving the way they are because of the system they're in. By the way, that's what's missing, is how do managers work the way they are. So anyway, so when you recognize that they're just going back to their comfort of command and control, is they don't have an alternative because we're not giving it to them. So you can blame them, or you could, remember the shirt, insanity?
Think different, man.
Think different. Yeah, now I used to be insane. Now I'm different. Look, if it's their fault, there's nothing you can do about it anyway.
Yeah.
If it's you're not taking responsibility, that's to me the big thing, taking responsibility. Ironically, I'll just say last thing, because this is kind of, people think, see, people don't know I was doing Scrum in 2001. My first Scrum training, quote unquote, was an hour. And I successfully got a team to do, I was there for other reasons. I was there for design patterns. And I'm in the middle of this conversation between, there were two, it was a very broken team. One group, one guy wanted to do it this way. Another guy wanted to do it this way. The other two were just shaking their head. What, my God, what's going on? It was a small team, about 6 people. And I'm there and this breaks out after I've done design pattern training. I'm going to give you a coaching tip here. But the thoughts going through my head were, oh my God, what am I doing here? Actually, the words were stronger than that. And I remember wanting to put my head down in my hands. Coaching tip. When you're in a meeting, do not shake your head and put your head down in your hands. It's not a good sign. But that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. So I stood there. I thought there. And what I did over the next hour, I said, look, you guys have a problem here, an issue here, whatever. I said, I don't remember exactly. But what I did tell them in an hour, I basically described doing things in small stages, doing the simplest thing that could work as long as you could change it to something more sophisticated if you needed to. So it's not the simplest thing that could work. It's the simplest thing that doesn't lock you in. That might be enough. And basically that was it. They had so much money. They ran out of it. I then I'd call sometimes, say, how's it going? They would say, we're working. It's okay. But then when the project was over several months later, the guy gave me a really nice email and said, yep, that's what we did. It was like 10 months. They were done. They were very happy, and it was on schedule. When you have a cross-functional team that is autonomous, that has all the skills you need, it only takes an hour to teach Scrum. I've done this several times.
Yeah.
The reason there's so much difficulty, and people forget this part in the new product development game, which inspired Scrum. They talk about in that article that the team has the ability to figure out what's missing. But most of the time, the way companies run teams, they're not given that opportunity and they don't learn it. And that's why teams struggle. So that's another thing to know. Why am I not able to do this? It's not, you got to take responsibility, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Take responsibility. No, that's fantastic. I think that's a great note to end on, to
Right.
show respect for people. Oh my God, where did that come from?
And what can you do to help them, even if they're showing up in a way you don't think you can?
Yeah, love people. Take responsibility. All these lovely first principles, dare I say? So, Al, this has been wonderful. I always enjoy talking with you. I'm going to pop you in the backstage. I'll say goodbye to those folks who are out there, and we'll close up in the back. Everybody, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I love having these conversations. This is really lighting up the fire in me to want to have more of them. If there is someone that you know out there in the Agile community that is not a community, let me know. Connect with me. Send me a DM. Send me a DM to someone who has been on this podcast, and let us have conversations. And we can have these conversations in public. But then there's a place for the dangerous conversations that maybe we don't want to have in public, that we have in private. We'll be hosting some of those soon. Thank you so much. And thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. Be more